Hey everybody and welcome. Pinar and I were just discussing what I was going to call my camera. We're going to call it Elliot from now on. And the reason is because that is the most astonishing piece of camera work ever. And it's a Sony. So a bit of advertising for Sony, simply because it's the first camera I've found that acts as a webcam. And acts incredibly well as a webcam and has functioned 100% all the time. Anyway, that wasn't the topic of conversation today. Today, it's all about Pinar and cultural differences in digital marketing. Welcome, everybody. A quick hello, and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Pinar Ünsal.
Hello, Jason. Good to see you. Thank you for having me. I cannot sing. So
no, you could sing, and it doesn't matter if you sing out of tune. What we did notice is, for example, Alida Solis, who doesn't particularly sing in tune, but she's got an enormous character in her voice, and she sounds so lovely and sweet when she sings. So actually singing in tune is not the important part. The important part is to have personality, character, and charm.
Yeah. I don't want to ruin this now, and you don't have to cut it out. Keep it like this.
Right. Okay. On with the unedited ever episode. Everything is just goes out as it goes out. Okay. We are live, and we're going to show some screens. I actually had a look in the Kalicube Knowledge Graph Explorer at your name and came up with some interesting information. One of which is, if we can show that first screen, is when I looked it up in the Knowledge Graph Explorer. With the accent, you get a place in the knowledge graph with Kalicube Tuesdays, as all the guests always do, because Kalicube Tuesdays always gets in the knowledge graph within 5 minutes of me posting the event. But then I started looking around your name and I tried a different spelling. I took away the accent on the U, the umlaut, as it's called, and the results in the knowledge graph changed significantly. If we can show that second screen. And we actually get the actress. And in fact, she doesn't have a dot on her eye either. And I hadn't realized that you don't have a dot on your eye on the Pinar. Exactly. And I think if we show the third one, we actually managed to get both of you in one result if you remove all the accents. But Google is not very confident as soon as you remove the accents. And I think what I wanted to show there is that as English-speaking people, we tend to think that the accents don't really matter. But in fact, the knowledge graph is incredibly sensitive to these accents. The dot on your I in Pinar, which I've actually got on screen, and I'm now ashamed of myself, and the umlauts on the U and Ünsal. And you told me something interesting about the I on the Pinar. Why do you use it, the dot, when in fact you don't have one?
Well, actually, I don't mind that you write it like this, because that's how I use it most of the time in my life, because I lived in Germany for 25 years, and it would be too difficult and too complicated to type it out or write it out always, and explaining that it has to be written without a dot on the I, and that's just very time confusing. And
but that's ironic in itself, because the German language has the umlaut, and Germans obviously want the umlaut all the time, but then they don't really get into the idea of not having a dot on the I.
Yeah, because that's a Turkish character. It has nothing to do with German. Like the Germans.
No, I didn't mean it was German. I meant that if you have accents in your language, you should care about accents in other people's languages.
But the problem is it gets complicated with some fonts. It's not a German thing. It's a general international problem that with most fonts you cannot really, or it changes like the way it's written. Then with the U, it gets it looks okay, but then when you take a different font, it really looks weird. And then you send something and suddenly your I is with a question mark. And I get a lot of newsletters where I see !nar, and so I just stopped using the I.
Right. Well, I think accents on letters are something that a lot of businesses don't think about. I mean, I know in France, for example, at one point I couldn't enter my wife's name, Veronique, because it has an accent on the E, in a French website. And an E with an accent is a French letter. And what they've done is taken some English written code, or English language written code, where they didn't bother with the accents. And you simply could not submit the form with the accent on it, which is astonishing. So obviously even countries with, or languages with accents, don't pay that much attention. But the knowledge graph, as we just have seen, is very sensitive to them. And that's an incredibly important piece of information for anybody who's interested in Kalicube, which is my super duper tool for optimizing your knowledge graph presence. If you want to be in the knowledge graph, you've got to be careful with your accents, not your hello, I have a very strange accents, but the accent on your letters. But that brings us nicely into cultural differences in digital marketing. Now, we talked at SEO Camp about this. Can you give me an introduction of kind of where you're coming from this point of view? The idea that in different countries we have very different cultures and we can't just translate content is what it comes down to.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we talked about this at the conference, but I think you can always talk about cultural differences in digital marketing, because there's like so many companies, especially nowadays, that are trying to start a business or sell their products in an international market. And then it gets interesting because they only think about, okay, what is working well in Germany, for example, what was working well in France. Let's just do the same thing in Germany or do the same thing in Belgium. But then there could be cultural differences, even though if the countries are really close to each other. It can be different payment method. It can be like you just had the example with the accents, and the language is very, it's not easy to really find the perfect translation and the localization for your products that you want to sell in a different market. And then you have to pay not only attention to language, you also have to pay attention to different religion, different holidays, different use of language. And then something that is funny in Germany or in French can be, as you know, we had a lot of things around Islamic jokes and stuff. And that really is nothing you should joke about in a country where you want to enter. There's these things that you should know, but it's funny that still people get it so wrong.
No, 100%. I mean, I'm English by birth, brought up in the UK, never really thought about other languages beyond the fact that I had to do French at school. Turned up in France and suddenly realized that it's not just a different language, it's a different culture. And then you realize that going from France to Belgium, French people make jokes about the Belgians. Obviously, the Belgians some of the Belgians speak French. If you start making Belgian jokes in Belgium in French, you're obviously never going to sell anything. That was the first example. The second one is Canadians is really interesting, because the French Canadians moved away from France like 200 or 300 years ago. And they've stuck with the original French language, and they get really annoyed when you use modernisms, which I'm sure is a phenomenal problem for kind of Germanic countries, Germanophone countries. And is there such a thing as a Turcophone country?
I don't know.
Good question. Sorry, excuse me.
I don't know.
Is Turkish really only spoken in Turkey?
Turkish is spoken in a lot of countries, but it has an Hungarian, same language family as Hungarian, and you can speak it Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, and there's a lot of countries that understand Turkish as well. They have that different dialects, accents, but it's not the most popular language after English and Spanish, maybe, or Chinese, but then it's in the top. I think it's in the top 10. I don't have really the numbers, but that's a good thing. I'll look it up.
Right. Okay. So it's in the top 10, but none of us had the dot on our I's despite that, which is foolish. And in fact, in English, we say to dot your I's and to cross your T's, which is quite an interesting phrase in this particular context. But on to the stories about kind of cultural differences. You were telling me at SEO Camp about a Pringles example, which I liked.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of examples when you start looking around and you think, how can these marketing managers make such a huge mistake? And I think it was an example that Pringles wanted to launch a bacon flavor, and they just launched it in the month of the Ramadan. And if you know Muslim people, they don't eat bacon, and especially in a month, and launching a product in the month of Ramadan, and a product that's made of pork is not really a best-selling product in that month, and for the later months as well.
And that's quite an extreme example. I mean, kind of you think that should be really obvious, but I think kind of with companies that kind of these things can slip through, and it's idiotic, and it's obviously very damaging to the company, leaves a big cleanup. And
a lot of companies, even Starbucks or Burger King, Nike, all the huge ones have made mistakes like this. Like they use a symbol, and then it was in Arabic. It meant God, and it was in the back of a shoe. And then Burger King had it as a chocolate, like kind of symbol, and then people were really upset about that, and they didn't even realize that it was Arabic actually what they draw on it. So yeah, there's tons of examples like this, which was.
And it's not paying attention to other people's culture and just thinking, oh, I can do what I want. I mean, from an Anglophone, Englishy person-y point of view, kind of, I think as a lot of English-speaking people tend to not be able to really conceive of the world from a point of view that isn't Anglophone and Western.
Yeah, I think the problem is that if you don't do your market research well, I mean, if you just go and use a tool and automatic, you have all the softwares that are translating a website in 2 seconds into another language, and you don't look over it, or you don't have really a real human person looking at it, a local expert. Let's say we had this example of a bag producer. He was selling leather jackets and bags, and he had a clutch as a bag, and then he used this tool, and in German it wasn't suddenly translated as the clutch of the car,
Right.
It was a bag. So it was really, and it was on the website, it was live, and it just looked so funny. If every person that knows German will just laugh at it and not buy the bag. So there's tons of examples like this that you can come across if the person that is responsible of the marketing or digital marketing hasn't looked through it again, or just used an automatic tool and didn't really localize it well, or didn't look at different payment methods. Like in Germany, maybe they want to have a paper invoice, and in the Netherlands, it's something called Ideal that everybody prefers to use. And if you just offer credit card, maybe then that's not enough, and people drop out of the basket and they're not buying your product. So this is something you have to look at. That has to do again with cultural differences, because it's different way of thinking. And
can we come back to the invoice example and come back to the thing of automatic translations? Because I think a lot of brands think, oh, this is going to save us lots of money. We don't have to pay somebody to actually do the translation or the adaptation. And it ends up costing them a fortune, because the example of the clutch is everyone's laughing at the bag manufacturer, trying to actually get back that good client or audience feeling. It costs a fortune. So it's a false economy.
Exactly. But not only just like the simple translations. Okay, this is something you can fix. I see it, I tell you, you fix it, no problem. But then again, if you say you have you're an e-commerce website and you're selling you're a fashion brand, and you're really good in the UK or in the US, and then you want to enter Germany or France, and then you just use a translator to translate, and not someone that is from SEO or content marketing. And that person doesn't really understand which keyword has the huge volume and which keyword has the potential, because he's not using tools like SEMrush or let's say the keyword tool and other tools as the Republic or something. So it's funny, then you lose a lot of potential and then you need an SEO agency from that market that comes in and says, look, great translations, but let me help you with that. And then they have to go through everything again. And then you change the descriptions and the title tags. So yeah, that is another thing in digital marketing where lots of companies are missing out on huge potentials because there is no keyword research behind it.
Right. Okay. So I mean, kind of when you're translating your site, you're not translating, you're adapting it to the actual language that people use. You mentioned SEMrush. There's also SE ranking. Authoritas also do all this kind of thing. There's loads of tools out there that can do it. But the danger is that you're not actually using somebody who understands what the keywords are that people are using.
Exactly. So that is something that I want to just address to people that are trying to be successful in new markets, that they should not only think about their marketing budget in terms of, I should do paid advertising, I should do Instagram ads and Facebook ads. Maybe if that makes sense for that country, you should, but you should also have a budget, and a good budget that takes care of this localization and the language topic. And also if that country needs reviews, then you have to have people writing reviews about your products. And there's trust is a big topic as well, besides all the translation and that the website works well.
And that's the point. Sorry, I mean, kind of obviously everything you said so far is basically cutting corners and trying to get there as cheaply as possible. And the idea is actually to say to brands, you have to invest. And one of those is that trust idea, is saying in one country we might trust Yelp, in another country it might be something else. And you were mentioning Istanbul. Why Yandex is so popular in Turkey?
Yeah, I mean, Yandex it's a really interesting. People ask me that a lot. They say, "Oh, yeah, how come and why is that? Why is that Yandex gets a?"
I've been wondering for years, so I'm taking the opportunity. Yeah.
Why does it get a part of the pie? I mean, after Google is Google of course is like 94% or 5%, and then Yandex gets 4% of the market share for search. So it's impressive, and then you wonder, and then you realize why is that? Because Yandex has solved the problem of being lost in Istanbul. Actually, they have a wonderful maps tool. It's called Yandex Navi, and that has really done a great job in mapping all the addresses of Istanbul. So, I mean, if there's like 50 million people in Istanbul, 10 million have it on their mobile phones, and that gives you all the advertising opportunities for brands. They put like little billboards and little like sponsored ads and products on the map. And you say you can just change. They have all these petrol brands. You can change the route you're going because you need to stop by somewhere. IKEA, for example, uses Yandex Navi. So, oh, there is an IKEA. I go to IKEA. Wow. Exactly. So it is a good advertising tool, and that's why also it has found a place, and it has been able to grow in Turkey, Yandex.
So are you saying that the maps themselves are better, or just the way it all or the way it all links together, and the fact that they can advertise better? Actually, than Google? Are the maps better than Google?
Yeah, the Yandex Maps is more popular and better than Google Maps at the moment. I mean, you can ask anyone that you know from Turkey; they will all say which tool to use. Everybody will say Yandex Navi. Everybody. So that's they just like have found a nice niche here in this chaotic city, and they've been able to scale their product and sell it to lots of advertisers. So there is people using the pins and the little icons and
Well, I mean, now a question about Istanbul. You just said chaotic city. Is it spectacularly chaotic?
At the moment, maybe because of the pandemic, you should think it is good, but no, because Fridays especially, it's a nightmare. And when you have to cross bridges from Europe to Asia or from Asia to Europe, you can be stuck in traffic jam for hours and hours. So it's still traffic-wise, it's chaotic. Like you plan your day, like earlier before COVID, when we had a meeting on the Asian side, because our office is in the European side, we would like book half a day or even the full day to travel, to go there, have the meeting and come back, and the full day is gone. So I'm very happy with online meetings at the moment.
So the chaotic aspect is not so much the lots of little streets with tiny little kind of houses and shops, but the fact that it's divided into two sides, one of which is in Europe and the other of which is in Asia.
Yeah. I mean, and Yandex solves that wonderfully because they show you alternative ways to drive. So all the taxi drivers, everybody uses. So you find a loop to go to go faster from A to B. That's why it's a lot better than maps.
Wow. Okay. Well, sorry, we've got off the cultural differences.
I didn't get paid by Yandex, but just say it's a good. Yeah, it's interesting. So you should really, when you enter a market, really research which search engine is good in that market. Really, you'd be surprised. I mean, who would think that? Oh, maybe it makes sense. Me as a jeans brand, maybe I should advertise on Yandex because you have shops there, or you have something to say, and then you can get a niche.
Yeah, I remember being told, I think it was Kaneki Suzuki who said that in Japan, Yahoo is the most popular search engine, but it's actually driven by Google.
Yeah.
And you're just going, okay, so I actually don't want to use Google. I'm looking at Yahoo, but the results are actually driven by Google. So that's a significant difference, that if you miss that, you're lost.
Yeah, exactly. Or, I mean, in Korea, I think there's also another one that is important, Naver. I never did something in Korea, but there's something like this. So you really have to look at the markets, also not just the search engines, also the social media usage and the mobile usage is totally different from market to market. So, for example, Germans might not spend that much time on social media than Turkish people do. They spend an average 3.5 at the moment, maybe even 4 on social media. And Instagram is really big here, whereas in Germany, it's not like the number one social media channel. So really, like when you have a product or when you enter a market and then you say, oh yeah, that worked very well in this country, it will work there as well. No, it won't. You know, if that's not the product, maybe it's a generation of TikTok and your product is good there. So you should, you know, try these platforms more for your social media marketing. You really have to analyze and research which, I mean, the market you're going for. You can look at the analytics data and then you know, expand to that market and not waste. I would say don't waste your budget very early. Try, experiment and try out things, and then, you know, have your website and your product ready before you really push the button to do like digital marketing activities. That would be mine.
And for that, a lot of them from social. Sorry, I'm coming back to social media. Can we rely as B2B businesses that LinkedIn is going to be a good solution in pretty much every country in terms of social media, or are there some countries where LinkedIn just won't work?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, as far as I've read lately, is good in most countries. In Germany, for example, there's something called Xing that has almost as many members as LinkedIn, even more. But yeah, I think, of course, the race will be won by LinkedIn. So if you don't use LinkedIn for B2B, then you're losing out. But I also think they have a lot with, LinkedIn is banned in Russia. They also have a lot of potential now with all these live webinars, and you know, you can use it for streaming as well. So I think LinkedIn will be very interesting to watch in the future. All the advertising, not just B2B, also B2C. There will be interesting things coming along. You shouldn't just look into search, and you should have the full funnel and look at other channels and try it really. It's this time that you should, everything goes more into digital marketing. So why not try out LinkedIn or TikTok or Instagram for your advertising?
Right. Okay. And so coming back to your example with invoicing and paying, I mean, one thing I hadn't really thought about was the idea that people drop off if they don't see a payment method they're comfortable with or that they recognize. And you were talking about the Netherlands, like a particular kind of payment system against Germany. I mean, payment systems are very kind of country specific. Yeah,
exactly. They are. I mean,
can't we just rely on credit cards? Everybody likes a credit card.
If you look at the statistics, 72% say, oh yeah, in Europe, the most popular thing is credit cards. Yeah, that's true overall. But if you go country specific, then you will have countries that is not their number one preference. And Germany, if you do business in Germany, and most probably will, because people in Germany, they are the ones that are most open to buy internationally. So you should really look at that market and think what German people would like to see as payment methods. I mean, if you want to solve it easily, you can use Amazon Pay, and then you have all the payment options, because in that account you can have your not just credit card, you can also have invoicing and other payments. But what I've seen, what we know from our projects, that potential customers really want to see the option, especially if it's a brand that they have never purchased from. The first time buying, they don't trust it. Like they buy a leather jacket, it's 500 euros. So, okay, I'm going to buy that with my credit card now. Do I know, is it a real product? Do I know if it's not like, it's stealing my credit card information? Is it secure? So if you have the option, and in Germany it's still close to 50% that they would be preferring to have an invoicing or bank transfer option instead of credit card.
Right.
They use a lot of PayPal as well, but it's interesting. You would never think that if you don't know that market before, that you should use Klarna or Amazon Pay or other SERP, I think, or SERP they call it. Yeah.
Right, okay. Credit. We've just shown on screen. In fact, Anton's just found it. USA credit, debit, PayPal prepaid, Canada bank card, PayPal prepaid. And if we go down the bottom, we're looking at Costa Rica with e-wallets. Apparently, they like those a lot. And in Colombia, Via Baloto and Dinero Mail, whatever that might be.
in the
But
Netherlands.
that is actually kind of incredibly interesting from my perspective. I just go credit card, no problem. PayPal, and that's the point. If I don't trust the brand, I was talking to Andrea Volpini from Wordlift just before about the idea of trust in a brand. And you're right. If I don't know a brand, I will tend not to give them my credit card information. I will tend to choose PayPal simply because I know that PayPal won't share that information. And I mean, I don't necessarily think PayPal's the best thing in the world, but it's a solution that I feel comfortable with. So if you're not a trusted brand in the market, you really do need something other than credit card.
Exactly. And interestingly, just because you mentioned PayPal, they have pulled out of Turkey, so it's banned. So you cannot really pay with PayPal in Turkey because it's
52% of internet users in Germany use PayPal. That's stunning. Followed by invoices, 26%, debit or credit cards, 12% direct debit, 6% cash on delivery, 1%. I would never do cash on delivery. I don't know why.
Actually, that is very popular in Turkey, cash on delivery. They pay on the door. It's called paying on the door. So you go and when someone comes, you pay cash on delivery. It's very popular because especially older people, they love to see the product, touch it, and then pay cash.
Right. Okay. Wow. And the other problem, of course, is that your neighbour could pitch up when you're not there and just take the product and you've paid for it and never see it. But
not everywhere. It's just like that the neighbour can take it for you.
Yeah. But I mean, they could actually take it and keep it was my point. We were having this discussion yesterday with my daughter. What happens if the neighbour keeps the product? And then cash on delivery suddenly becomes really interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the data is very different here. Like if you look at this, Hootsuite puts out a report every 3 months, and then they do it also per country, and you can see the different payment methods. And there, for example, PayPal is not that high. It's still invoice is around the 50% or something. So I don't really know, but just to know, if you do something in Germany, you should really have a different alternative there.
Anton's gone completely nuts with the numbers here. He's now telling us 92% of online stores in the Netherlands offer Ideal as a payment method in 2007. PayPal, Calamara, Afterpay, and credit cards were offered far less that year. So Anton's searching desperately for all this data. I think we should throw some more at him, because let's come back to social media, because I like Twitter and LinkedIn. I don't like Facebook, and Instagram bores me senseless since I stopped being a digital nomad with the COVID situation. I should change my point of view, shouldn't I, if I really want to reach an audience in other countries?
Yeah, you shouldn't think about yourself, what you, Jason, prefer. It really is, let's say you have a product that is for young female fashionistas, then you should go for Instagram. Or you have a younger population that could buy, it's a gamer maybe or something, or you should try Twitch, or there's so many platforms that you should try to see which is good for your market, then for your product.
And what's the best way? Sorry, here's a question then. If I want to move into a new country, for example, Germany, I'm in France, and I think, right, okay, I've translated my website, or I've got it adapted. I'm up there, and I want to move in there. I want to know which social channels I should be focusing on. Is it best to believe the numbers that you've been citing, or to give it a go and try different social channels, see what works?
No, I mean, first you should really do your homework and look at all these reports. They are out there, they're for free, and then you see really how big your reach will be if you choose that certain social media channel. So from that you can kind of do the, backwards, you can do the reverse engineering and think about, okay, what will be the CPCs, or what should be my budget, and what should I try out? Would I need to use an influencer thing, or it's this that you first have to get everything in front of you, and then you really see the picture, and it becomes clearer to you what you should be using as a social media channel first. And if you, of course, you should have some experiment budget, because what the numbers say is a statistic from maybe 3 months ago, and suddenly it will be different. So you should have a budget and measure everything, and try to see what works good for your service, or what works good for your product.
And also your industry, obviously it varies from industry to industry, and these numbers tend to be quite kind of general and global. And the other question, something just occurred to me, are there countries where influencer marketing simply doesn't work? Because it's a bit of a buzzword and people love talking about it, but are there countries where that works more than other countries, where people will listen to influencers more?
Yeah, we've seen that. Like, we have a customer that is a jeans brand, a big one in Turkey, and the influencer marketing works wonderful here. Someone puts on a jeans, runs around, makes some stories, and then suddenly that day hundreds of jeans are sold. And they do the same campaign and try it with a German influencer, and that was just like maybe 10, So it is a huge difference, but maybe it's even more expensive to use a German, and then the ROI is not as expected. So yeah, of course, it really is something that you say, oh yeah, I have to use this because it's a buzzword maybe in Turkey, but it might not work in the other markets. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's sometimes you can discuss about micro influencers and influencers, and yeah. But with social media buying, I like social media. The influence will be there, and it's growing. And if we like it or not, it's something where we have to be as a brand. Doesn't have to be paid advertising, or doesn't have to be influence advertising, but you have to put your content somehow into these channels, because people are searching your products and your brands, and they want to see your social media channels as well. So
and from I mean, what I'm hearing here basically is, for every market I need a completely new strategy.
Yeah, if you want to be successful, or you're really lucky.
So if I want to be lazy, I just throw the same strategy across the world, and I'm not successful, and it's a waste of money. But if I want to be successful, I have to actually build a strategy per market.
Yeah, and you have to build your brand. I mean, you're the Brand SERP guy. You know that. Like, brand is, if nobody knows your brand, and you can do advertising for millions and nobody will really, who's that? If you don't have like a strategy behind it, and what you're communicating, how you should interact with your customers in that market, it can be expensive for you, because like CPCs and that's what most people do is oh, let's just do some Google ads and Facebook ads, and I'll be selling. But that is not really the right strategy, and then you really become very dependent on these paid channels. And you say, okay, I have to put more money because then I'm selling. And yeah, but if you don't, do your homework in the background, and if you don't really invest in that brand and how it is, liked in the market you are operating. I mean, we see that with a lot of brands. Then maybe they're really getting huge in the original market, but then the ones that you want to expand to, say, what? How can? Because I have conversion rates in Turkey, they are 5%. Why don't I get these conversion rates? Because nobody really knows you.
Right,
and as basic as that.
I mean, yeah, no, sure, 100%. I mean, Frank, coming back to the Brand SERP guy thing, is one thing I'm stunned by is how different a Brand SERP, when somebody searches your exact match brand name, how different it is from country to country, from language to language. And that's also something to be taken into account. And it might even, and this is something I'm just thinking of now, the difference of your Brand SERP could be a reflection in the difference in the way that your audience perceives you in that particular market, and potentially a great insight into how well or badly you're doing.
Exactly. I mean, like the reviews that you might have in one country is wonderful and very positive, and maybe in the other one, because you have delivery problems or other things, then it shows up really badly for your brand then, and there's not so much you can change about that.
A lot of people will kind of search on their own browser, see those good reviews, those great results, and not think, well, actually, if I go and search in Germany, it's going to be completely different. And it is completely different. I think people often fail to realize that. And one really quick trick is to actually track your Brand SERP, just to have a look, because it's one keyword in a tool like SEMrush or SE Ranking or Authoritas. And you track that one keyword across all these different countries. And in terms of the number of keywords you're paying for within these tools, it's very little, but it does give you a great insight, just glancing at it, seeing how different it is, into kind of how different these markets are perceiving you. Because Google is reflecting through your Brand SERP what the market in that, what the audience in that market perceives you to be. Sorry, I'm getting a bit overexcited because it's a new idea. Thank you very much, Pinar.
You're very welcome.
Oh, and a classic case of wrong names like Mitsubishi Pajero for Spanish. Oh, go on. Tell us that one, Pinar. You obviously got a good story
no,
there.
that one I don't know, the Pajero one. What does it mean? But I'm sure it's something.
Well, I think it's brand names that have a different meaning in a country, and all of a sudden you get into trouble.
Pajero in Mitsubishi. Well, maybe that person can tell us. I don't know what it means to translate it. I just remember when I saw that, I just remembered this gut milk, are you lactating, the one in South America. Have you heard about that one?
No, tell me. Do tell me. A nice story to end.
Famous. There's this famous commercial in the US, a milk brand says gut milk, and there's this, I don't know who it was, a model or someone like having this milk, and everywhere is milk flying around. And then they did this campaign in South America, and that was translated wrong into "Are you lactating?" Like gut milk, are you lactating? So.
Oh dear. So right. Okay. Which is a problem of translation.
And then they got a lot of jokes, and I'd say breast milk in your coffee and things like this. So it's horrible thing to do. I just remember that one, but I wonder what means Pajero now. I don't speak Spanish.
Well, I think the point was that in fact Pajero is a bad word in Spanish, so I hope no Spanish people are listening.
Bad word. Okay.
The point, I think the point being that when you have a brand name, when you think about your brand name, you have to make sure that it makes sense in all the different languages, and that it's not a rude word in certain languages if you intend to become an international brand, which is fair point.
It's fair point, yeah.
I mean, I had a client who spent absolutely months thinking up a product name, and in the end, what they did was find a completely unique and new word, because that way you avoid all of those problems. And it made sure it didn't exist in any language, which is big research effort that they had to make that happen. Anyway. Go ahead. Sorry. Concluding statement from Pinar about
these slang words is difficult. I'm always surprised how Google and Alexa or others figure it out, all these language things. So yeah, if you get a product and you Google it, I'm sure it has a meaning somewhere. So it's a big thing to do.
Well, all of these Google, Facebook, Twitter, they've all got linguists working for them, and they have linguists who actually go through all of this stuff to actually figure it all out. I think kind of we forget that there are human beings somewhere behind all of this, and that in order to get a machine to understand a language, you have to have a linguist to explain that language. And Google and the other machines, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, whatever it might be, are investing in the people power, if I might say, to actually adapt to the culture and the language of each individual market. And that might be the best example to follow then. Be like Google, invest to adapt correctly to each market you wish to enter, because they make that effort and their results are accurate for that reason. Thank you very much, Pinar. That was delightful.
Thank you very much, Jason. Already half an hour. Wow, that went well. That was fun.
Quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Pinar. You won't sing back.
Thank you, Jason.
You did sing back. Thank you very much. And a quick reminder to the video watchers here today. Next week, it's Ben Gabler. What problems does CDN solve? And I think the answer Ben's going to give us is a lot. So see you next week. Thank you very much. Have fun. Thank you, Pinar.